I think I might just start off every news video with the latest terrible Kotaku headline. It's about the only thing they produce nowadays that can garner any bit of attention. Anyway, not the only gaming outlet to get dunked on as of late. But as we get closer to E3 in June, numerous game companies are starting to reveal their plans, and we're also starting to hear about some of the blockbuster releases coming this fall like Battlefield 6. Will Electronic Arts rebound following the massive disappointment that was Battlefield 5? We shall see. There are enormous expectations, much of that created by EA and DICE themselves, who are hyping this up as a true next-generation revolutionary experience. Again though, I think I'll reserve judgment until we actually see something. There have been some rather interesting rumors as of late, like one which states that there will not actually be a campaign mode, and another that states that some maps will have extreme weather conditions, which is not entirely new for the franchise. Now, while EA recently was getting gamers excited for Battlefield 6, it was also announced Battlefield Mobile is coming, because, yeah, of course it is. Not much to say about that. I'm sure the gameplay will be fine and the monetization will be either atrocious or annoying. Mobile gaming has a horrendous reputation for a reason. Microsoft continues to gear up to move in on the Japanese market, something that surprisingly Sony has been neglecting as of late. One of the biggest rumors that emerged recently was VentureBeat's Jeff Grubb citing sources that Hideo Kojima is in negotiations with Microsoft right now to have them publish his next game. If that were to actually happen, that would be truly insane, something I could have never envisioned happening in a million years. This is exactly what Microsoft may need to do to finally break into the Japanese market. Regardless, if this is actually indeed happening and a deal is reached, I have to imagine maybe during Microsoft's E3 2021 showcase, we hear an official announcement. Honestly, just thinking about this as a real possibility is just so bizarre. Almost as bizarre as Netflix thinking it was a good idea to greenlight this abomination of filmmaking. Marvel's Avengers continues to fall, with creative director Sean Escage now departing from developer Crystal Dynamics and rejoining Naughty Dog. Deus Ex died for this. Escage previously served as director for the Uncharted spin-off Lost Legacy after working on both Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us. Have to imagine Square Enix being more interested in money rather than creativity is why maybe he decided to go back to his old stomping ground. Still, I'm so disappointed in what Marvel's Avengers became. In 2017, I believe it was 2017, it had a great little teaser trailer in which we were all expecting a great single-player, story-driven experience, but it ended up being a boring, buggy mess of a looter live service which was more interested in having a giant cosmetic microtransaction store than anything else. Again, did I not mention that Deus Ex died for this? Amazon's foray into the AAA gaming space continues to be dismal, as their Lord of the Rings MMO is the latest game to be cancelled. This time though, it does seem to be that much of the blame can be thrown on Chinese megacorporation Tencent for this cancellation, as they purchased recently one of the co-developers on the project and could not come to an agreement with Amazon with how to proceed forward. Regardless, Amazon's free-to-play Lord of the Rings MMO is no more. This is just their latest setback, as their free-to-play shooter Crucible was cancelled months after the studio unreleased it. In New World, yet another Amazon MMO, recently got delayed again earlier this year. Anyway, maybe one day Amazon will release just something. As was discussed here on the channel earlier on in the month, the outrage mob continues to go after 6 Days in Fallujah. The controversial FPS has been targeted by many in the games industry, many of which actually destructively signed a petition linking it to real-world violence. Absolutely insane. Since then, organizations have come out demanding platforms like Xbox and PlayStation ban the game. So far, nothing has happened, but this is definitely a case of the Streisand effect. The same can be said about indie game This Land Is My Land, an early access open world stealth game which was targeted by the outrage mob because it's a game about Native Americans by a small European studio who does not have any native consultants. Following a few viral tweets revealing these details, many began to harass the indie game developers, accuse them of stereotyping, and also in turn caused a sizable uptick in active players. As I have said before in the past, I just don't get the point of outrage like this and the Twitter accounts that do this. You literally just accomplish the exact opposite of what you wanted, probably making the developers a few extra $1,000 at the very least. The game's only sin, as far as I can gather, is that it doesn't feature native consultants, which I didn't know was a mandatory addition nowadays. Should they have? Probably, but this is a small indie studio with a background in making games based on history, and I bet that none of their other games included any experts or consultants. In a few other smaller pieces of news, Epic Games revealed that they will lose over $300 million on the Epic Games Store, which they are just totally fine with. By taking on Steam and establishing themselves as a real competitor in the PC world, they knew that they would have to spend big, and they have done that while losing a lot. Has it taken down the so-called Steam monopoly that they were battling? Not really. And will it ever actually be profitable? Only time will tell. EA recently purchased racing developer Codemasters, and the gaming world is now starting to feel the impact, as it was recently revealed that EA has more than doubled the price of F1 2021 in half of the regional stores on Steam. As noted by gaming outlet VGC, the biggest price increase is in Argentina, where F1 2020 cost 649 Argentine pesos, but F1 2021 will cost 3,599, an increase of 454%. Naughty Dog is exploring the possibility of a Last of Us 3 because of course they are, and it definitely sounds like it will either continue Ellie or Abby or both of their stories. Co-writer of The Last of Us Part 2, Hallie Gross, saying in a recent podcast, "I don't know how much I want to reveal, and I did write an outline for a story that we're not making, but I hope one day can see the light of day that explores a little bit what happens after this game. We will see." Neil Druckmann then noted that internally at Naughty Dog there's been many discussions about making a third game, but nothing is set in stone. He would continue adding, "We've now had 2 games that I feel speak to something universal as well as telling a very personal story for these characters. With 1 game there's no pattern of what a franchise is. With 2 games now there's starting to be a pattern. Now I feel like there are some structural and thematic themes you'd have to stick to if you're making a third game. Considering how successful this franchise has been, the first and second game, and the boost that will come from the HBO series, I can't say I'm surprised to hear that they are making plans of continuing forward. Personally, I didn't care all that much for the second game's story, and really would prefer Naughty Dog does something else, but if they do in fact return with a Last of Us Part 3 in a few years, I would hope to see an entirely new story and cast, but do I think that will happen? Probably not. Having a huge time jump by say maybe 30 years with Ellie taking on a Joel-like role to a new protagonist could be something interesting, but who knows. I wish I could say I'm intrigued by the idea of a third game, but I'm just not unless, of course, it's entirely new. Anyway, today we have some pretty significant stories to discuss, which include CDPR claiming that they learned their lesson with Cyberpunk 2077's launch, and also laughing at Google Stadia. Sony continues making some rather baffling decisions. Bungie angers the Destiny 2 community with the greedy implementation of a long-requested feature. EA is exposed yet again for something so obvious, and Activision Blizzard continues falling apart. So a lot to discuss, but before we proceed forward, if you do go on to enjoy this content and want to show your support for videos like this, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing for more, and turning notifications on so you do not miss out on any new content. Also, if you want to further support this content, check out my Patreon and consider supporting it. Nonetheless, learning lessons in this games industry is something that rarely happens at all, especially when you sell 13 million copies in a game's debut month. After each debacle, this is what publishers and developers like to say. EA said it after the Star Wars Battlefront 2 loot box debacle, Bethesda said it after Fallout 76, and BioWare said it after Mass Effect Andromeda, and then again with Anthem. Following Cyberpunk 2077's rough launch, CD Projekt Red told investors just days ago that we managed to introduce a new IP to the market and to the minds of gamers around the globe. Now with the Witcher franchise, we have 2 strong pillars on which to build the future of CD Projekt. But of course as well, no, not everything went as planned, obviously. It has been a huge lesson for us that we shall never forget. The issue I have with a remark like this is CDPR's history. In Jason Schreier's book Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, it's outlined the decision to delay The Witcher 3, and that was because CDPR's executives saw the outrage over the buggy state of Assassin's Creed Unity. Just a few years later, I guess that lesson was quickly forgotten for some reason. As IGN notes, at one point, CDPR's executives shared that in financial terms, 2020 was the best year in the history of the company, but followed up by saying that they are aware that the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 does not resemble the launch of The Witcher 3. We are, as we've been stressing a lot, we're going through a lot of changes inside the company, and we believe we've taken a lot of lessons from everything that's happened so far. Now, in terms of repairing Cyberpunk 2077 further, CDPR's executives revealed that the majority of the developers have moved on to making new content. A big part of the team is still working on improving Cyberpunk. That's approximately 40% of the team. That's the current status. Over time, we believe this team will become smaller and less effort will be dedicated to improving, patching, and updating Cyberpunk. But as we said, we will work on it for as long as is necessary. Another big revelation from this investor call was the fact that CD Projekt Red only refunded 30,000 copies. That has been the headline of various articles and tweets, but just is not really true. While CDPR refunded directly 30,000, the actual number is much higher and is cited in their financial documents. While those 30,000 refunds, a part of their Help Me Refund program, cost them a total of $2.23 million, refunds overall cost them $51.2 million in 2020. What that indicates is that refunds were probably above at least 600,000 copies, which is certainly still lower than some had expected, considering everything that had gone wrong for CDPR since Cyberpunk 2077's launch. As of late, there's been a lot of people questioning the future of Cyberpunk 2077, and whether or not CD Projekt Red would give it the Mass Effect Andromeda treatment, meaning that they would just abandon it and move on. I personally never thought that made much sense, considering the game sold 13.7 million copies in December 2020, and it's in CDPR's best interest to turn this game around. Anyway, that's exactly what is happening. CEO Adam Kaczynski recently told Reuters, "I don't see an option to shelve Cyberpunk 2077. We are convinced that we can bring the game to such a state that we can be proud of it and therefore successfully sell it for years to come." Which I am a bit confused by this, because in January, studio head Adam Badowski defended the game, calling it not disastrous, that they were proud of the game and its artistic vision. So, are we proud of it or not? Isn't exactly clear, but I think the overall main point is that CDPR will continue to build on Cyberpunk 2077, and it'll be interesting to see if they can turn this around, which I remain very skeptical about. I've really never seen such a divisive and split opinion on a game before, and I really don't know if CDPR can change that. Some other notes to come from this investor call is that CDPR is not considering being bought out, as they see no benefit, and when asked about Google Stadia sales, they had a nice chuckle, literally.
What was the Stadia share in sales, Piotr? Yeah, I will answer it. We were not disclosing, but obviously most of the sales accounted to PC and Stadia come from PCs and from such important players as first line Steam. So the Stadia sale is obviously not to be compared with such a big portal like Steam is, and yeah, that's all I can say for now.
This will probably anger the 12 Google Stadia customers and the executives that are trying to have their platform be taken seriously by this AAA games industry. Just the other day, we finally got an explanation of what happened with Cyberpunk 2077 from a lead developer's perspective on the game. Pavel Sasko, on a Twitch stream, detailed how many journalists and gamers just don't understand how difficult game development was for Cyberpunk.
What happened, that the company that did The Witcher did Cyberpunk and so on. I'm like, well, I mean, what happened was we have reached for new IP. We have tried to learn as much as we can. We have tried to really, our goals have been super ambitious, and I don't really feel that the players and journalists fully, completely understand how difficult it was to make this game. I don't really feel, and I'm not saying that you guys should be giving us more credit for it, because you should demand a fully functional, well done game, and that's your right. The thing what I'm talking about is more of an acknowledgement, that was a very difficult game to make, a very ambitious one, and we have tried to pull off as much as we could on all the fronts. And I think that a lot of them we have done it, and a lot of them we still need to improve. And like I think that you will see it. You are already seeing it in the patches that we are moving towards the direction and improving.
So, I definitely feel for the development team, who was screwed over by terrible executive decision-making, but at the same time, every game has a rough development. CDPR spent years hyping up Cyberpunk 2077, and there was a clear lack of transparency of what was happening behind the scenes, enough to the point of how could gamers and even journalists understand how rough things were, when in public the game is being marketed as the greatest thing since bread and butter. That's my issue with this, but still, I am looking forward to the developers' future, especially when they get back into the Witcher universe. Worth mentioning, it's now been 4 months since Cyberpunk 2077 was removed from the PlayStation Store, and there's still zero indication of when it will return. Next though, Electronic Arts decided to show off their latest pathetic defense of loot boxes, and a water is wet type of expose. CBC News received an internal document from an insider at Electronic Arts, which proves that EA is pushing players to spend money on FIFA Ultimate Team. Shocking, right? Maybe if the year was 2013, but as I said, this isn't really news to most gamers, as this is pretty obvious at this point, but nevertheless, a big news outlet covering this, giving attention to the mainstream, can be considered a big deal, and EA was absolutely pissed about this. First, they hit back in an interview with GamesIndustry.biz, saying it's important to say that we never push people to spend money in the game. I can't say that with a straight face. We do encourage engagement in the game, and every single item that you'd like to engage with in that mode can be engaged with for free. Sure, endless grind. Play is the #1 success metric. It's not about incentivizing people to spend. Well, it certainly is when all of those extremely rare cards cost hundreds upon hundreds of hours of grind, and even then it seems extremely unlikely you get that card because of just how rare it is. I think some of the estimates going around is thousands upon thousands of dollars to get the Dream Team. It's almost impossible. But anyway, EA continued, our job is to inspire the world to play. Play is the metric and engagement is how we define that success. Monetization regularly follows that, but not always, and it's certainly not here, while it actually is. Then in a response to Eurogamer and in a blog post now on their website, they pushed back once again on the notion that loot boxes are gambling, despite there being dozens upon dozens of studies now finding a direct link. We also firmly disagree that FIFA or any of our games involve gambling. Regulators in multiple countries around the world have stated publicly that where there is no cash method, loot boxes do not constitute gambling. And again, they continued by presenting their newest defense. Recently, a US federal court judge dismissed a related case, noting that the lack of any real-world transferable value to items takes them outside of the gambling laws. So again, supported by all of these perspectives from authorities, we do not believe any aspect of EA's games constitutes gambling. We hope to see these facts more accurately represented in the future. That's Electronic Arts for you. When the science isn't on your side, bring up the fact that some countries haven't banned loot boxes yet as a defense. Many countries have outdated gambling laws. EA's lobbyism has thus far prevented them from being updated because when that inevitably happens, they are screwed. Scratch that, they are fucked. Always interesting how EA neglects to mention the countries that have indeed banned loot boxes. Anyway, this is a company that acts and pretends as if they truly care for their players. I'm just so tired of the people that support and enable Electronic Arts who are in fact inflicting serious damage upon families, taking advantage of the lack of regulation in video games by utilizing virtual slot machines to rake in boatloads of cash and, in turn, creating tons of new problem gamblers. Some kids, some adults. EA is as dedicated to ruining futures as Riley Reid is swallowing them. Continuing forward, Bungie is facing mass protests over the upcoming implementation of a long-requested feature for Destiny 2, that being transmogrification, or in other words, players being able to turn one piece of armor into another visually without affecting its stats. The problem, though, is that Bungie went about this in the worst possible way. As noted by Forbes, players will only be able to transmog 10 armor pieces, not set pieces, per class with earned currency per season. With there being over 1,500 individual pieces of legendary armor in Destiny 2, it's estimated it will take you about 12.5 years to grind out all current armor sets for transmog, or you can cough up some real-world cash. To transmog all that armor, it would cost an estimated $3,000. So the time gating here is the big issue. Getting a little deeper, even the grind, which introduces 3 new currencies into the game, seems to be just a mess. As explained by Polygon, players will need to adventure into the world and kill some enemies, passively generating synth strand for themselves while they play. Once they have enough synth strand, 150, they can buy special bounties for Ada1 that offer synth cord. Once Guardians finish their bounties, they can take their new synth cord and trade it into Ada1 for synth weave. Then they use the synth weave to unlock armor appearances for the transmog system, just a complicated mess like I said. But of course you can skip this process by using the real world currency silver to just buy synth weave, which likely is the intention of Bungie. Either way, the Destiny community is absolutely livid with these plans, and thus far Bungie remains mostly silent. I would expect some sort of change to come, but all we know now is a community manager stating that they appreciate the critical feedback, and most players are demanding there be no time gating or caps at all on this system. Either way, there are other issues with this new system and changes that Bungie has made. The increasing cost of shaders, past glows not working with this system. As someone who isn't really an active Destiny player anymore, this is just a bad look for Bungie, and I really think this entire system needs to be adjusted. It should not take enormous outrage to achieve that, as the system, compared to competitors, is pretty darn atrocious. Now moving along to the former partners of Bungie, Activision Blizzard, they are dealing with what I would consider a nightmare scenario. On the Activision side of things, the company continues to struggle with cheaters. It was announced recently that 475,000 accounts have been permabanned, and Activision confirmed that they are giving out hardware bans. The issue with that is the cheaters just create new accounts, and a few Google searches reveal just how easy it is to get around a hardware ban. I personally think the Apex Legends way of going about cheaters is one of the better routes, which is just throwing them in a pool together. Let them fight it out away from regular players. These bans and other security measures just are not working. In other news, Activision is finally claiming that they will adjust an arguably pay-to-win skin, which is almost invisible in dark places. The Rook skin for Rose has been a problem for quite some time, a tier 100 unlock sold as part of the Season 5 Premium Battle Pass. Players have been complaining about it for months, and now finally it seems maybe developer Raven Software will change it or not. Honestly, it's pathetic it's taken this long, and is also a clear example that cosmetic microtransactions can definitely offer gameplay advantages. If you were at all curious about Call of Duty 2021, which is rumored to be a World War II shooter named Call of Duty World War II Vanguard, well, it currently is being described as an effing disaster, not my words. Call of Duty and Battlefield insider Tom Henderson, who I believe used to go by The Long Sensation, recently revealed this detail on Twitter. Henderson has years of accurate leaks, and he also mentioned one big issue that will plague this year's Call of Duty, developed by Sledgehammer Games, and next year's developed by Infinity Ward, and that's the fact that both games will have previous generation console releases, which will hold them back. Anyway, it's not surprising to hear COD 2021 is a mess, considering COD 2020 was a mess, and Activision forced Treyarch to take over because it was such a mess. As was reported at the time, Sledgehammer and Raven were originally developing Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, and they were arguing a lot, which led to the project being a mess and Activision intervening. This time around though, Sledgehammer is being left on the project, and as was announced last month, Activision is anticipating lower sales. It's too early to say what this game ends up being, but this definitely appears to be the year that Battlefield should dominate. Now, on the other side of Activision Blizzard, we have Blizzard, and they too are dealing with their own crisis, and that is more and more veteran talent abandoning ship. Turns out, many hate working for Activision Blizzard, who has indeed destroyed the developers' ability to focus on creativity over anything else. Like other beloved developers, Blizzard too is not the company that they once were. The values that they had in place years ago just aren't the same today. In recent years, most of the founders of Blizzard have moved on, notably Mike Morhaime, who is the beloved founder and CEO, left in early 2019, and then formed a new video game company last year called Dreamhaven, which has attracted many former Blizzard employees. But modern day Blizzard continues to lose their identity as even more veteran talent say goodbye. A few weeks ago, 14-year veteran David Kim left the developer. Kim is known for his work on StarCraft 2, Diablo 4, and World of Warcraft. He was one of the lead designers working on Diablo 4. But an even bigger shocker came recently when Overwatch director Jeff Kaplan announced his departure. After almost 20 years, Kaplan said goodbye. Blizzard has since announced that assistant director Aaron Keller will be taking over as the new director on Overwatch 2. This has been the trend for Blizzard the last couple of years. years, and here in 2021, it continues. The Blizzard soul is practically dead at this point, thanks to Activision. To our final story, we have to discuss everything happening with Sony as of late. Some good, some bad, some questionable. The good news is that Sony abandoned their plans to close the PlayStation 3 and PS Vita stores, something that should be applauded, but then we have some other rather questionable things, like the decision to not proceed forward with Days Gone 2, and instead develop a Last of Us remake, because that's definitely something gamers were asking for. And actually, it probably isn't for gamers, it's for those who may become interested in the game franchise once the HBO series begins to air. Jason Schreier of Bloomberg outlined in a recent report how Sony is changing, how they are enamored by Metacritic scores and obsessed with blockbusters. The gaming world always believed Days Gone 2 would happen because the first game was profitable despite the mediocre reception, and also there was a lot of room to build on the first game's formula. Unfortunately, we were all wrong. An indication of this came months ago when some of Ben's studio's key developers and leadership departed from Sony. Now we know why they left, and that's because Days Gone 2 is dead, and the studio at the time was being used as in a support role for Naughty Dog, assisting in The Last of Us Part 2's multiplayer, or I think that's standalone, and a new Uncharted game. Thankfully, Ben's studio has now moved on from their support role and is back working on something new. Still, many Sony fans are pissed at the direction the company is going in. In recent months, Sony has distanced themselves from the Japanese market, shutting down Sony Japan and ending long-term partnerships. Once Jason Schreier's story broke of Sony obsessing over blockbuster games, many shared their love for former SIE CEO and Worldwide Studios chairman Sean Layden. The following clip was passed around from 6 years ago, many highlighting the moment as what they miss about Sony.
A little earlier, I was delighted to hear Andy give a shout out to one of the most iconic games of our time, Vib Ribbon. Yeah, give it up for Vib Ribbon. A personal favorite of mine that really embodies the PlayStation spirit. It wasn't a multi-million seller, but that's not the point. Vib Ribbon was unafraid to go against the tide. It was courageous in its ambition, and it brought a completely new experience to gamers. It's an incredible time to be part of the PlayStation family. I look forward to growing our gaming community through breakthrough experiences that inspire and delight. After all, guys, it's all about the games, isn't it?
It's important to remember Layden left mysteriously at the end of 2019, and before that Andrew House, another beloved Sony executive, left in 2017. Specifically with Layden though, who had been with the company for over 30 years, there was rumors of a power struggle going on inside of Sony, and he lost that battle to Jim Ryan, leading to him departing from the company. When Jason Schreier's story broke the other day, Layden liked a series of tweets, many of which was from fans missing him, but also some critical of the current leadership and direction that they are taking. It's quite clear to me that there probably is some bad blood in the air between Layden and Ryan, which ultimately led to Layden departing. Either way, for Days Gone 2, many are still holding out hope. Currently on change.org, there's a Days Gone 2 petition closing in on 100,000 signatures. Maybe, just maybe, one day this franchise will continue. Besides blockbuster games, Sony's next move appears to be bringing their franchises to mobile. Sony is currently hiring a head of mobile who will be tasked with building and scaling a team of mobile leaders and will serve as the head of this new business unit within PlayStation Studios. So in a few years, very likely a God of War, or Last of Us, or Ratchet & Clank mobile spin-off game will be on the way. You know my opinion on mobile games, and this news is just a bit depressing. As of late, there's been some other rumors and leaks of Sony doing rather disappointing things, like paying Capcom to delay Monster Hunter World's PC version and blocking crossplay, but regardless, I am definitely nervous by the direction Sony is going in. Of course, I'm extremely excited for the near future with games like God of War Ragnarok approaching, but the long-term future, I have many questions. For now though, Sony can continue to roll in cash as PlayStation 5 sales are on fire, and they have an extremely impressive pipeline of exclusives coming. Anyway, what do you make of Sony's recent decision making, and what are your thoughts on the other stories that we discussed today? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, Instagram, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.